Welcome back to this explainer, focused learners. Today we're diving into a really provocative argument from our source material. We're looking at the invisible impact of capitalism on marriage, dating dynamics, and the power struggles happening right inside your home. The core argument here is wild. It suggests the traditional male-led family structure actually became the ultimate enemy of modern capitalism. We're going to explore how capitalism may have deliberately undermined male authority in the home, specifically to empower female consumption. Let's get right into it. Think about your own household for a second. When you picture a modern couple, who actually holds the ultimate purchasing power? Who's driving the economy right from the living room couch? Well, as we're about to see, the answer to this question completely rewrites the traditional script of male-female dynamics. So what's the actual number? It's a staggering 85%. Today, women account for 85% of all consumer purchases. That means the modern consumer market is overwhelmingly driven by female purchasing power. This isn't just about everyday household items either. It represents a massive, fundamental shift in economic leverage within our relationships. And it totally scales up to our biggest life commitments too. Look at this. Women are driving 91% of new home purchases. 91%. They're literally leading the charge on the absolute biggest financial decisions a couple can ever make together. And honestly, this purchasing dominance shatters some of our most deeply held gender stereotypes. Like, you might assume the consumer electronics market is this heavily male-driven space, right? But the data actually shows women buy more tech than men. They purchase an average of 4.7 devices compared to men's 4.2. Consumer psychology reveals that women have essentially become the chief purchasing officers of the modern relationship. They're acting as the primary shoppers, not just for themselves, but for the whole shebang. I mean, whoever controls the Amazon Prime account holds the true power, right? Section 1, the Fordist Family Compact. Let's look at this traditional historical baseline. Okay, so in the traditional single-earner relationship, the man was the primary earner and he managed the budget. But here is the central, highly provocative argument of this research. Historically, men who manage the household budget tend to consume less. They restrict spending. So for a capitalist system that survives on constant, ever-expanding consumption, well, a traditional male-dominated budget was literally the enemy. It was just fundamentally incompatible with market growth. Something had to give. The research presents this bold, almost ruthless theory. Capitalism basically had to deliberately undermine the traditional man's authority in the home. To survive, the market needed to financially empower the woman so she could constantly consume, which effectively neutralizes that male budgetary bottleneck. Moving to dual-earning couples wasn't just some social evolution. According to these sources, it was a strict economic necessity just to keep the cash registers ringing. Section 2. The Post-Fordist Gender Shift, How Labor Transformed. The literature features this really powerful quote from Linda McDowell. We are all becoming women workers now. What does that mean for our romantic relationships? Well, it means the traditional, stable, male provider identity has been completely eroded. Both partners are now pushed into flexible, unpredictable roles. It strips away the traditional financial leverage men once held in a marriage. That old dynamic of a singular, dominant breadwinner, it's pretty much vanished. And capitalism is the ultimate beneficiary here. The sources present a pretty stark take. Capitalism simply doesn't like men. Or at least traditional men. For the market, the best man is basically one whose authority has been entirely taken away. By eroding his financial dominance and creating a dynamic where both partners in a relationship are hyperactive consumers, the market wins. The traditional patriarch who suppresses household spending, he's been successfully sidelined. Section 3. The Illusion of Equal Money. Let's look at modern financial ideals. Now, if you ask modern couples how they handle their money, they'll usually paint this idealized, romantic picture for you. 73% claim to pool their incomes entirely, and 79% say they make decisions completely together, striving for absolute equality. We desperately want to believe our romance is immune to economics. But consumer psychology tells a very, very different story. Sociologist Viviana Zelizer points out that money in a marriage isn't just neutral math. It is not fungible. Every single dollar is deeply tangled up in gender roles. Where the money comes from and who actually earns it secretly dictates how it is spent, and maybe more importantly, who feels they have the right to benefit from it. So despite the reality of dual incomes, the psychological friction here is intense. Many men still subconsciously view their income as the main breadwinner pool, Meanwhile, women often feel entitled only to the specific money they earn. And incredibly, they frequently deduct childcare expenses from their own earnings before even valuing their contribution to the household. It's like the ghost of the traditional family wage is still haunting our modern checking accounts. Section 4. Mapping Household Financial Control. Sociologists actually map this financial control out in very specific ways. While a few couples still use traditional allowance systems, most claim to pool their money. However, the research reveals a hidden truth. Even when money is technically pooled, the partner with the higher income, which is still statistically more likely to be the man, retains tacit, unspoken control over the relationship's finances. That egalitarian idea we just talked about, it's often just a surface-level agreement. So why do couples pretend everything is perfectly equal? Well, they do it to preserve the romance. Subconsciously, couples work incredibly hard to hide income inequalities, mostly to protect the traditional male ego, even though the modern consumer economy demands that the female partner takes center stage as the primary spender. Achieving a harmonious life together often requires couples to actively blur the very real economic disparities between them. Section 5. The New Economic Romance. Redefining Our Relationships. With traditional financial authority stripped away, modern men have had to find totally new ways to establish their value in relationships. Instead of budgetary dominance, men are leaning into healthier alternatives, things like emotional openness, humor, stylistic expression, and spiritual strength. These traits are literally becoming the new currency of modern dating. They create more sustainable relationship dynamics that aren't rooted in who controls the purse strings. To sum all this up, the future of coupledom requires constant, ongoing negotiation. With male budgetary dominance a thing of the past, relationships have permanently transformed. Families are now viewed by the market primarily as units of hyperconsumption, and this forces couples to navigate their romantic lives on entirely new economic terms, constantly figuring out what works for their unique dynamic. I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought. If the invisible hand of the market has actively dismantled traditional male authority just to empower our consumer habits, as capitalism increasingly views your relationship purely as a shopping cart, how will the rules of romance rewrite themselves next? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Focused learners, keep asking questions and keep looking for the invisible forces shaping your everyday life.